Let's make this crystal clear via the silver proving ground requirement. Back in Warlords of Draenor, Blizzard actually made it so that in order to sign up for a heroic dungeon, you need to complete a silver ground on your character. Now, the silver proving grounds are shocking. I think that's three. That's 1, 2, 3, go.
He fucking killed him! Who killed him? No! A woman! A policewoman! And a guy! Another guy shot! Another guy! An Asian guy! In the window! At fucking Ted's house! I don't know, he's a big, gray-haired man in a robe and he fucking got me strong with great fucking forever!
I was 10, and the Asians are number 2 in town, so you saw 10, half the competition.
They saw me see him through what? They saw you fucking came here, now they follow you, I don't know. You think they follow you, I don't know. Look, here's what I saw you. I'm freaked out, I panicked, I tossed my roots, I crashed into 2 cars. So they would have heard, they must have heard, they know someone was out there. You know, someone saw, someone. Right?
Yes, giving us Legion stuff back via towns did help a
Mic
bit,
on,
but it also
mic
felt like
off.
a kick in the teeth. The fun Legion abilities would either eat a talent row, like with Rat's Wake of Ashes, or be basically useless, like with Feral's Feral Frenzy. With Battle for Azeroth, the Legion borrowed power was gone, and Blizzard perhaps had far too much faith in the strengths of the underlying design of their classes, leading us to the present day. To lay out the basics, what tools do Blizzard have to make gameplay fun on the class level? Well, they've got balancing buffs, debuffs, resources, and then reacting to RNG in the form of procs. For each of these things, Blizzard usually goes with a more simple implementation. And the point is that be it Mythic Plus, Raiding, or PvP, this is the bread and butter. These are the class design tools that Blizzard use. Could they use those tools better? Could they use more tools? How could these things be mixed up in the future? Well, that is a large part of what we will be answering today. World of Warcraft experience is something that I think a lot of us players feel, but many of us can't put our finger on. And it's what I'm going to call flow mismatch. Most of the time, for the content that people are doing and the classes that they are playing, I don't believe they're in the flow channel of that diagram. To look at it from a basic perspective, the goal of class gameplay should be to engage the player, right? So, get them into flow instead of either boring them or being so complex that the player is anxious and doesn't feel like playing. Now, looking at any diagram for the flow channel, you can really see where boredom is. That's when the challenge is lower than the player's skill level. Now, there's going to be no challenge in doing world content on an easy class, so you're probably going to be bored when you're doing that world content. I would say, personally, that the gameplay of the Timeless Isles was a great example of Blizzard getting this balance right, where there was just enough meat to the mobs that the gameplay was kept engaging. That's mobs though, but what about classes? Well, in short fights like those you find out in the world, there's an extremely low skill ceiling in just about every WoW class. Using cooldowns does not come into play in a fight of that duration, nor does
Since we're on
keeping up
defense,
your
first we could leave
dots or your
Echo up if
buffs
they don't ban
optimally. World mobs provide just about zero challenge, and core class gameplay doesn't provide challenge either. This creates boredom, and then I believe that boredom is compounded on by how the game incentivizes people to do content through its reward systems. So even if your skill is vastly above the difficulty of a bit of content, and that content doesn't match you as a player, the game is still going to make you feel like you need to do that content. It will feel mandatory, but when you're doing it, all the things that I've described here will create boredom. Now I'm going to contrast this with the design of Final Fantasy XIV's Bard, and do bear with me. Look, I actually think that game feels pretty terrible when you're starting off. That's just my opinion, but it's what I think. But once the jobs level up, we can gain some insights. The Bard is a ranged class with 3 long-duration songs, each of which has their own mechanic, with you making different gameplay decisions during each song based on what those songs do, and then you weaving in your off-cooldown GCDs. Now it's a little frustrating when you fail because it's all sort of intricate, but it's very rewarding when you succeed. Now, there are quite a few seconds difference in the kill times if you actually do well playing it, and that does mean that playing a Bard well actually feels really rewarding in that game. Warcraft classes, though, often don't have this aspect to them. Why? Well, it's because the mechanics that make a class hard, that, add extra flair, well, they almost never matter in the context of a regular fight, say in the world content. Things like damage over time spells and cooldowns only matter in longer fights or PvP. So essentially, in instanced content. But the thing then is that in instanced content, which is often very hectic, well then, a simple rotation actually feels fine, because you're then dealing with many other encounter mechanics. Essentially, it seems to me here, right, that faced with the need for WoW to be really accessible, as evidenced by the Silver Proving Ground example from earlier, Blizzard decided that WoW's classes really did need to be very simple. But then I think Blizzard recognized the problems there for the top-end players, and therefore I think Blizzard decided to start making the instance content more and more mechanically complex. That is basically how I think they've chose to keep the game engaging for players who otherwise would be really bored if it was only based on the quality of the class gameplay. And while I think this does work fine for many people, I think that the current sentiment in the player base shows that it's not working across the board. And to be real with you here, I've got to wonder if a good solution would be less complex boss fights, but slightly harder to play classes, maybe taking us a bit closer to the mop days of the game. But okay, with the lay of the land established here, let's dive into some more of the specifics. In World of Warcraft, it is feast or famine. So much of our damage is concentrated in cooldown windows that second-to-second class gameplay often feels like you're using a foam sword. Take, say, Rat Paladins or Demon Hunters outside of their cooldowns. Doesn't feel great. The Final Fantasy XIV Bard, back to it again, is a handy contrasting point. Its mechanics are in a timescale such that every few seconds is a new point of engagement, and there's no downtime in its core song mechanic. And that means there's always something different for you to be focusing on. And that is a situation that is very different to World of Warcraft's model of keeping the high points of gameplay strictly for when you've got your cooldowns up. Huge portions of overall damage come from your cooldown windows, and that further reduces the importance of the 60 to 80% of a fight where you don't have cooldowns. And this de-emphasizes the second side of gameplay outside of those cooldown windows, i.e. most of your time playing the game. We appear to have moved more and more in this direction over time, and I'm not sure it's an ideal direction for us to be in. I really do have to wonder if we would be best toning down the cooldown windows and instead...
Op 4 is defusing a bomb. You need to disable their... Mission failed. All friendlies were eliminated.
I got DC, but this works.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, fuck Ubisoft servers.
Absolute trash.
They really are.
No matter what game.
Secure the area. Keep the bombs protected. Be advised, a bomb location has been compromised.
Device placed.
10 seconds to insertion. 5 seconds and counting.
Get a good look at that.
Op 4 has located a bomb. Get ready to engage.
Deploying shield. Camera deployed. Hostiles located.
Garage. In that room to your left, mirror, in that hallway.
One friendly operator remaining. Op 4 is defusing a bomb. You need to disable their diffuser. Diffuser located. Disable it. Mission failed. All friendlies were eliminated. Secure the area. Keep the bombs protected.
Camera ready to activate. Reinforce the walls.
I got clean.
Stay clear.
Thank you.
Activate camera. I'll just relax here and let you guide to the left. ED mounted. Second up.
10 seconds. 5 seconds to insertion. Op 4 has located a bomb. Plan your defenses accordingly. Op 4 has located a bomb. Be ready for hostile action.
Changing mag.
Setting up a diversion. Always room for more!
Help.
A bomb has been located by Op. Mission failed. All friendlies were eliminated.
It's cold sore. Never happened before, so subscribe. I think it's like a lot worse than it looks though. It's like a yeah, yes it does. Let me enjoy some share. I know, I'm a disgusting person. Purpose is for life, bro. Yeah, well, I'm gonna try to put some sort of medical appointment on it. I'll take a bite then. That doesn't really take this far. It's from that time I told you, man. You want to eat that line from out of that trigger's neck. What to do it? John, I know. Remember what you did? What'd you do? Nothing. You did box of nerves out of them.
We need to locate a bomb. Drone has located a bomb. Insertion in 10 seconds. 5 seconds before insertion. You've located a bomb. Make your way to its location and defuse it.
Repulsion device planted.
Okay. Has anyone called asking about Saul in the past stretch or anything? That's all we need to know. Or It's clear. Over.
Back charge. Stay clear. Reloading. Try The diffuser has been recovered. The diffuser is no longer in your possession. One friendly operator remaining. The diffuser is now secured. We have been eliminated.